Hello, and welcome to the Inner Fire Climbing Podcast. I am Jesse Firestone, your host. My guest on the show today is Flo TIlley. Flo is a mindset coach with Lattice training. She has a master's in sport and exercise psychology, and she's an expert in flow state, among other things. Very fittingly, I'm sure many people have made that joke to her. But this was a great chat. We talked about all things related to mindset in climbing. We obviously talked about flow state quite a lot, what it is, how to get into it, things that prevent you from getting into it, just sort of how to get better at that element of performance, which I think is something you really just can't ever invest too much energy into. And it really is, when the chips are down, the thing that decides whether you perform well or not is your mindset. And yet we give a lot more credence to the physical side of training. So I'm really interested in this side of the sport, and Flo is as well. So we had a lot of common ground to talk about. We also talked a bit about values, which was an interesting discussion and gave me some homework to do that I did since this episode. And I think that that was productive for me. And it was a really good benefit of this conversation that I sort of went down that path of working on some of those things for myself, just to sort of understand, where I'm coming from a broader perspective. So that was really valuable, and I appreciated that aspect of the conversation. So I hope you guys enjoy it as well, and thanks for listening. Good day. Were you coaching and climbing today?
Yeah, coaching today. Good day, as always.
Sweet. What's your like daily day-to-day coaching? Like, how much time are you on a screen? Do you work with people in reality too?
So it's all remote, all through the computer, but I only do 3 days a week, and I can do my hours whenever. So it's
Gotcha.
Super flexible, and it means I'm not at a computer all day, every day, which is nice.
Yeah, that can be a draining part of being an internet climbing coach.
Yeah, but yeah, the flexibility for sure helps.
Cool. So you get to go climbing during the day sometimes too, because you get those other days a little more free.
Yeah, exactly. Which, especially for the peak, it's got a lot busier. So if you can get out in the week, it makes a massive difference, which is nice.
Nice. That's where you do most of your climbing, in the Peak District?
Yeah.
Sweet. What do you? I know there's a lot of trad climbing there, and I've seen a lot of bouldering there. Looks really cool to me. I said that to Ollie too, and I feel like a lot of people who aren't from the UK laugh at me for thinking it looks. I think it looks really cool, but I guess the weather is the main thing that's not cool to people. What do you mostly do when you go out climbing?
So I'm just transitioning now from sport climbing back to bouldering. So the last few weeks I've been back on the grit bouldering, which I really, really enjoy. I think it is amazing boulders. It's really good features. It's so friction dependent, which can be frustrating, especially if you can't get out regularly, because you get a low humidity day and it's cold, and it's so much easier. Yeah. I get the frustration.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so in the summer I'm much more focused on sport climbing.
Gotcha.
Yeah, in the Peak and in Yorkshire. There's some good sport crags there.
Is it mostly, the sport is mostly limestone?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. How's that transition from limestone sport climbing to friction dependent grit bouldering? How's that go?
It's very different. Yeah. It definitely takes getting used to. The other day I just spent maybe an hour just trying to do a slab with really smeary feet, and it's kind of it's just good practice. Don't think about the grade, just get used to standing on the feet and balancing and that kind of movement.
Yeah. Do you find yourself, are you the kind of person who has ambitious goals for your seasons? Are you trying to red point a really hard route, and then you sort of decide when to give up on it and shift to maybe trying to do hard boulders, or are you more let the season come as it comes and figure it out as you go? How do you sort of plan it out?
Yeah, so when I get into a sport project, I'm very much focused on that, and I'll spend, I will be quite careful of trying to get the right partners and really pushing to go there. This year it's been a bit different. I recently moved house, and it was like we had a really dry summer, so it was really easy to get out sport climbing, and then it suddenly started raining, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, it's kind of over the sports season. I didn't really get to have that real focus. So it was a bit of a funny one. I was like, oh, I guess I'll start bouldering then. But
Yeah.
often it is a bit more of a, finish the project kind of thing.
Yeah, like try to red point. That's actually really relatable because if I opened this window behind me, you could see that it's like the air quality here is still really bad, which is quite late in the year for it to be really, just because we have a lot of wildfires. I live in the northwest part of the United States, and like there's a lot of wildfires here. So I was like trying to red point a route, and then just sort of started getting really smoky, and it's like you just can't really go out there anymore.
Yeah.
So, and now I'm like hoping for rain, but if it rains, then my route will seep. So I'm like, I guess my sports season is just over, like unceremoniously.
Yeah, that's what it felt like, unceremonious.
Yeah, but I mean that's like comes with the game of doing an outdoor sport, I guess. And I love bouldering, so I don't mind switching to bouldering. It's not so bad. Yeah. From like a mindset perspective, I know I haven't even actually introduced you yet, but you're a mindset coach, which we're going to talk about a lot today. How does the transition from sport climbing to bouldering and back feel for you? Do you struggle with it at all? Do you find that you can put into practice the same things that you help other people with? What are like the sticking points mentally for you with both disciplines?
Yeah, so I guess in terms of the transition, I often find it actually quite exciting because I kind of forget how much I enjoyed the bouldering, and then when I get back to sports season, I'm like, oh yeah, I love sport climbing.
Yeah.
So often that's, even though it's a bit sad to leave it behind, I do like it's overall an exciting point for me. I do find the challenges are different, so it is quite interesting to work on those different parts. So say with sport climbing, for me it's much more about the pressure and managing expectations and being really staying present with it, whereas bouldering, I think because you get so many more chances, I find it's much more about, okay, how can I really refine my like approach to bouldering, and like the visualization and the route reading and the creativity with it all. And obviously there is overlap for both of them, but yeah, I do think there's a little bit of a difference there for me.
Do you think you're like a generally positive person? Because when I asked you like what you struggle with both things, I don't know if this is because you're a mindset coach or if it's just what you're like, but you were straight to like what you enjoy about both of them, which I think is like a kind of a hallmark thing of like people who have good mindset, is that they can like focus on the positive and not get sucked into like the negative parts of the experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah, probably would class myself as optimistic. I'm in a particular, I'm not facing any challenges at the moment with it, so it's easy to be positive. It's definitely not always.
Yeah, maybe if the season had gone longer and you've been like deeper in the red point process, it'd be a different conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, overall I would say I see the good in things more than not, I would say.
Yeah. How long have you been climbing, Flo?
I started when I was about 7, so about 20 years now. Yeah.
And what did that look like for you? Like, where did you get started, inside or outside, or like were you drawn to one discipline in particular? Like, give us your the short version of your climbing story.
Yeah, it's very much started indoors. It was a sport that my family all decided we could get into together and do together. And then that naturally led on to doing competitions. So throughout my youth, I did competitions. I was on the GB team kind of on and off over that period. And then got to uni, kind of still competed, but started the transition to very much more outdoor, and since then has been, and I would class myself much more as an outdoor climber.
Yeah. What did the comp scene teach you, or like how did it go for you? Were you competing in sport and bouldering both?
Yeah, I did a bit both.
Yeah. Did you enjoy that?
I overall really, really enjoyed it. It gave me a lot of focus when I was younger, and like I enjoyed the training. It it meant that I did a lot more traveling than I probably would have otherwise done. I've made really, really good friends from it. Kind of the whole kind of like, I guess the holistic experience was really good. I definitely had like put a lot of pressure on myself in some of the comps and would maybe like dread it the night before or like really not climb well in some of them. Whereas like other comps I'd really enjoy the pressure and like climb my best. So there's like mixed experiences with it. But overall it was, yeah, I'm really glad I went through that.
Yeah. Did that experience of competing nudge you towards focusing on sports psychology and all this stuff that you've gotten educated on?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I realised how much the mind can affect your performance. I think especially for me, because I would have such good days and I could really climb my best. And then other times I would just really struggle and not enjoy it. And then like just a few conversations with coaches kind of being like, oh, you can really kind of switch your mindset so you're kind of relaxed and then you can really go into boulder mode and fight through it. I was like, oh, there really is something here. And then I did it at PE at school up to A level. And then, yeah, I was like really enjoyed the sports aspect of the psychology. I wanted to merge the psychology and the sports. Yeah, so I did sport and exercise psychology at uni. Okay,
I'm going to sound like a dumb American here, but what does doing PE up to your A level mean? Can you translate? Do you know what that means in American?
So I guess I was aged. I did it up to the age of 18. So I did it as like I don't know if that's at college.
Just about, yeah.
Yeah, the final bit of education before you go to university.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, high school. End of high school. Okay. That makes more sense. Yeah. I don't know what an A level is. I've gotten pretty good at like Celsius. I know my font grades. But the school years I haven't learned yet. So, yeah, tell us about your education that you did after that. You got your sports psych degree, and then I think you've also done like a separate flow state education thing.
Yeah, so I did the undergraduate and then I went on to do a master's in sport and exercise psychology, and then last year, was it last year or the year before, I did further education in flow state, which was a coaching course, so that was accredited with the ICF, International Coaching Federation, which just means I've just got past the standard for it. So alongside coaching skills, it taught you about flow state, the framework of flow, how to incorporate that into coaching, as well as like the psychology and the neuroscience of that.
Yeah, it sounds super cool. When we chatted about it briefly the other day, I'm very familiar with flow and the basic tenets of flow and distraction and barriers and all that stuff. But I didn't realize that there was like an accredited course on it, which I guess just, again, shows my ignorance. But I found it very fascinating. And I think I don't want to go too deep into just the fundamentals of flow, because I think that has been covered quite a bit elsewhere. But I do want to talk about some of the nuances of it. But I think it would probably help people if we just did like the very quick, like, you know, what is flow? What is it based in? Like, what is it rooted in? I think most people probably have had flow experiences, but maybe they can't quantify it, Can you just sort of define it for us?
Yeah, so flow is that experience of being fully focused in what you're doing. There's generally this balance of challenge and skill where what you're doing is just a bit more challenging than what you're capable of, so it really forces that full engagement. It's this sense that your mind and body are quite connected, so you just let yourself happen, you're fully trusting in what you're doing. You have this effortlessness where even though it's really challenging, you feel kind of in control of it, and that effortless feeling. it's hard, but in the moment it feels effortless.
Yeah, you know it's like you know that it's actually difficult, but you're just watching it happen, and it's not as difficult as it was for whatever. It's like when you send your project and you're like, why did that take so long? It's really the why did that take so long feeling.
Yeah, well, that felt easy.
Yeah, it's like I think we all sort of aspire to have more of those experiences as climbers. I guess I mean, I always like to ask people what their motivations are and what they find attractive about climbing, and there's many, many answers to that question. I think we'll probably talk about that later today too. But I think one answer that seems very universal is just that feeling of like when you figure it out and it just goes really well, you know, and you're like, what took me so long to get to this place? But I guess that's an interesting question. Like, is flow something that we can have more often? Because sort of by nature, as we get better, the challenges have to be harder in order for us to truly be in flow, right? Like you can't just climb the same route over and over and over and still be in a flow state on it. Like, is it a reasonable thing to just want to be in flow all the time?
Yeah, so I think it'd be unrealistic to say that you're always going to be in flow. But it's certainly something that we can increase our chances of doing by setting the scene, having a really solid mindset towards it. Looking at what, like you mentioned, what barriers there are there that you have to flow and how you can combat them. What was something that you said there that really completely forgotten what was in the second part of your question?
I think I was just asking, like, is it reasonable for us to always want to be in flow because of that, like, matching up the challenge level to the skill level? You know, it's always going to be upping the ante a little bit. And so it gets, at least in my experience, it gets more challenging to get into flow because I have to demand more of myself also in order for it to be hard enough, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and kind of to flip that the other way, climbing provides a really good experience for that because you're always having to like see what's working well, getting the feedback of is what's happening working, upping the challenge by maybe doing a harder climb. So you're always kind of setting the scene in that way. Mm-hmm. And so I guess if that's not always, you're not getting the flow experiences that you hope, it's then thinking about, okay, well, why isn't that happening? What can you do to make that happen more?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's not a question of like trying to always be in it as much as like when we have an opportunity to be in it, it's like sort of the optimal state if we can. We don't want to miss a chance to have like a good flow state experience. Would that be a better way to, yeah.
Yeah, and like flow is something that we can experience not just in climbing, but obviously in anything we can do. Like we might experience flow in this conversation where we're feeling like really connected and it's all just like happening. We might even get it with like a simple task that you're doing at home, but because you might be really present with it, putting a lot of focus into it, and actually you get into that flow state. So it's not just something that we can do with climbing, it's something we can do throughout our lives. And that, I think it's really cool because it creates such a meaningful experience. It really builds connections. It enables you to do more challenging things with more confidence. Yeah.
I wonder what you think about this. I kind of think of it as being like attention that I don't have to pay, like attention that I don't have to work for. Like I don't think that I have attention deficit disorder of any kind other than just, you know, the amount of that everyone has from having a smartphone in their pocket. But like a lot of things that I do in life, a lot of like, you know, mildly challenging skills, I do feel like I have to like work in order to pay attention to what I'm doing and to stay like tight with it, especially if it's something I haven't done before. I guess that's because the challenge level is too high. And so kind of go into that like overwhelmed state instead of being, you know, it's like takes a lot of effort in order to pay attention to it. And then on the other side of the scale, if the challenge level is low, like doing the dishes or something like that, like it takes a little bit of effort to like stay paying attention, like do a good job and like not have to wash the dishes again tomorrow or like miss something, you know? And I feel like those things are just more effortful, whereas like that middle zone, it's like I don't feel like I'm using up any of my resources to pay attention to it. It's almost like free, you know? Does that ring true for you?
I think I guess with flow, you want to have this like you need this intrinsic motivation and like, which maybe talk about values more later, but like really valuing what you're doing. So in that sense, because you've got that motivation, it's easy to stay focused. Like it might still be challenging to bring that focus, but because it's actually really enjoyable for you and you want to be doing it, it's almost, it's easier because of that. I would I'd put it that way more.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, I guess your emotions do play a pretty big role. Like we've kind of mentioned barriers, but we should probably talk about them a little more explicitly. Like if something is super scary or super painful, it's probably going to be harder for you to get into and stay into flow. And if something is, you know, fun or like rewarding or just feels like pleasant, you know, like when the moves are super, when you're on just like juggy tufas and you're kind of like hero climbing, I think it's just a little bit easier than when you're like doing some nail biting slab. Although I know some people find like nail biting slab really fun. But you know, for the general population, I think the tufa hero climbing is probably a better example. Or even like a mundane example is like I can go out in my garage and get out the bin of holds because I've been like populating my spray wall, and I can just not pay attention to the clock and burn so much time out there just dinking around putting holds on the wall, because that's just a pure fun experience with like no negative emotions associated with it, basically, unless I like bash my thumb or something stupid, you know? Yeah, let's talk about barriers a little bit. Like, what are the things that prevent us from getting into flow? What are the things that make it easier for us to get into flow?
Yeah, so barriers to flow is, say, the opposite of having that fun. If there's a lot of external motivation, so you're doing it because you feel like you should. You mentioned about fear if something's really scary and you don't have the skills to manage that, and that will become a distraction. If you've got a really busy mind and you don't have the mindfulness skills to be able to notice it and bring yourself back to the present, that will become a distraction. If you've got like a mindset which is very fixed and not focused on learning or mastery, and it's kind of like, oh, this is the skill set I've got, I better use it, that suddenly becomes a distraction, it becomes a stress, it increases that challenge level, so you're less likely to get into flow. Whereas you spoke about having it being fun, and when we can be really playful with it, that's kind of like the sweet spot of where we want to be to really help us then drop into flow. So in terms of like, maybe if we call them gateways, having a playfulness, being creative, having a growth mindset, being really just doing it for the joy of it, doing it because you really value it, they're all going to help us create more experiences, more flow opportunities.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, just with the putting holds on the wall example, I guess I used to be a route setter, and there's something about activities that are, I guess I would say the challenge level is like self-regulating, where it's easier to get into and stay into flow. So like art probably is a really good example. Like if, as you get better at art, you just are going to try to do more complex things with your art. You know, it's sort of like natural. And I think with route setting, it's the same. Like a really good route setter is just they're either doing it faster, you know, they're setting something simple faster, or they're setting something that's really, really complicated. And it's easier for them to sort of calibrate the challenge level. Whereas with climbing, we're often just sort of choosing a challenge level. Hopefully we're thinking it through and trying to match it to our skill level. But I think in a lot of cases, we're choosing it relatively arbitrarily based on like a number grade or something like that. And then we wind up with this like potential mismatch, and it's like a little bit harder for us to get into that creative state.
Yeah. And I think your point there with grades is that they can be really helpful in signposting us, but when we put too much emphasis on what it means, it can put us in the wrong challenge level and make it really hard to access flow.
Totally. Is it possible, this might sound like a dumb question, and I'm probably going to lead the witness a little bit during this podcast, but is it possible to be in flow and also be having like a lot of fear at the same time? Like you mentioned earlier, like if you have the skills to manage it. So like, is that a thing? Can you be in flow and also like be doing something that you do find really scary? Not like the absence of fear, but like you are afraid and you're also in flow at the same time.
I think so, yeah, because it could be that the fear just totally focuses your mind. Like, say a random non-climbing example, you're suddenly running, I don't know, you break the law and you're suddenly running from the police. You're not doing that because, well, you might be, but you're probably not doing that because you love it. You're like, you suddenly got loads of motivation and you're like, I just got to get out of there. You're like fully focused and actually you end up in a flow state.
Okay. Not an at-home activity that we recommend for practicing.
No. But I guess that example that I think, the environment you might not have all of the mindset there, but suddenly the motivation and the drive is high enough that you're so engaged, there's no room to be thinking elsewhere, that you are in flow.
Yeah. Maximum attention, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. What are some other things that climbers commonly struggle with? And I think we can separate it into like getting into flow. Maybe we can also talk about getting back into flow when you leave it, because you mentioned mindfulness, but like what are the sorts of things that really block climbers? So we have fear, that's a really common one. What about like, a fear of failure or just like performance anxiety in general? Do we treat those things differently in terms of like learning how to get into flow and stay into flow?
Yeah, so they're definitely both things that will make it harder to access flow and kind of either pull you out of it like quite quickly, or just stop you getting there in the first place. In terms of what the issue is, it's obviously very individual, but it's kind of coming back to, okay, well, where is your attention focused? Is it on just the outcome? Is it on kind of being better than the rock rather than kind of working with it? Is it because you're really valuing the social recognition that you might get from it, or the kind of the sense of self-worth you get from it? So there could be lots of different reasons why you might have fear of failure. But it's coming back to kind of, is it on something very extrinsic, something very outcome focused? Which if it is, it's then very likely become a barrier to achieving flow, to accessing flow. How
much of this is stuff that you would have people work on in terms of doing things at the crag, like while they're there, versus doing things, separately, and the rest of it, like practicing mindfulness or just, reflecting on why they climb and things like that? Are those like both practices that you would have people engage with?
Yeah, definitely. So there's things like mindfulness that you can do away. But things that you could do at the crag, for example, if you are focusing too much on the outcome, what that might mean for you, what it might mean for you socially, it could be coming back to, okay, well, what am I learning? What's the intention of this session? Is it to learn a certain sequence? Is it actually just to take away all focus of the outcome and just actually this session is about fully for the joy of it? We're doing it for no reason other than just enjoying it. There's no purpose of it. And like reflective things to notice, like when you do notice yourself becoming distracted by the outcome, kind of just I think a lot of the time it's bringing awareness to that and then deciding how you want to act instead.
Yeah, I guess awareness is like usually the first step to any kind of behavior change, so that makes sense. In terms of just accessing flow, so basic. People are out trying their project. They are ready to send it. They know the moves. Could be a boulder or sport climb. Doesn't really matter, I don't think. Does that, you said setting the scene earlier, which I kind of like that, but how do people get into flow? Is there a set of rules? Does it vary person to person? When you work with people, do you find you stumble on different things working for different people?
Definitely varies from person to person and where they're at. So say if you're working with someone and actually you know that they are really doing it because they just absolutely want to be there, they're really loving the climbing, the mastery focus, the problem solving, but actually they're just struggling to stay focused at the time, it might be, okay, let's really work on visualization, let's work on maybe there's some self-talk or a mantra that you can bring in to focus the mind again, or some mindful techniques such as feeling the rock or focusing on your breath. Whereas it might be for another person actually really getting solid with what they value in climbing, or getting focused on that intrinsic joy and working out, okay, well, what does that look like for you? How can we cultivate that more?
Is there like a type of person where so I'll tell you something that I've run into a lot, and I know this both like friends of mine and also clients that I've worked with, where when they try to practice mindfulness, when they try to do things like breathe or do a mantra, and even in some cases self-talk, it actually it raises their anxiety level. And I think I've always sort of been of the belief that that's something that can be practiced, the same as if you like sit and try to breathe and practice basic mindfulness and you haven't done it a whole lot before. Like the first response that you're going to have is that your mind is like extremely busy and crazy. And then after you practice it more, you realize that's actually very like normal. That's kind of the point of the practice. But is there a type of person where it's almost like a kind of anti-flow in order for them to get into flow? Like they have to sneak up on it a little bit?
Yeah, I guess it's always about finding what works for the individual. And I'll be wanting to know kind of what is it that's really distracting them when, say, you're trying to focusing on the breath, but actually your mind just keeps on wandering off somewhere else. Where is it wandering to? And that could be kind of actually more of what we need to work on. So I found this with myself as well. Like this summer, I again was trying to use like visualization. I was breathing before I pulled onto the route, but I felt really distracted, and I realised I felt like it was a route that was within my grade. I felt like I could do it. I put a lot of expectation on myself. And so like no matter, I was trying to do all of this breathing. I was like, why isn't it working? And then I was like, oh, it's because I'm focusing way too much on the outcome rather than why I was there, why like the people I was with, enjoying the day, the chance to be on that route again because it was a fun route to do, and those kind of things.
That helped you get into flow a little better.
Yeah, it definitely helped. I still didn't like crack it. Like when I did do the route, but I was very much trying very hard at the top when I knew like it was in the easier bit at the end, and I was like really trying hard not to fall off. So yeah, it overall helped.
I always find it's a little bit of like a ride the waves kind of process where I'm like trying to get into flow on my project, and like most of the time, especially with sport climbs, most of the time it's not like a clean bottom to top flow state, unless it's just an extremely sustained route. But there's almost always like periods where I kind of blink back to awareness and I'm like, oh my god, I'm like at this rest and I need to like keep my shit together, and then you're battling through some moves that are comically easy and you're not sure why you're yelling things like that. Maybe a little bit less flow statey sometimes. Yeah, there's this idea I think I've heard Hazel Findlay talk about called clutch, which is like almost the opposite of flow, where you're like it is that like sort of you are in the moment and it feels very hard. It doesn't feel weightless or effortless at all. Is clutch like a part of the flow, like academic lexicon? I've always wondered this when I heard Hazel talk about it, or is it just an invention of, because I love the concept. Is it a real thing?
Yeah, so there is more research going into clutch, which it's definitely got overlap with flow in that it's still, you're very absorbed in the process and still focused, but rather than that effortlessness that is related to flow, like you said, it's effortful, you're trying really hard. So there's definitely overlap in terms of the focus, but the difference is in in the effort. And often when clutch comes about is when the pressure, there's suddenly like a pressure for a specific outcome, whereas with flow you want a much more kind of open goal. Let's just see what happens. Whereas as soon as we're like, oh, I need to do this now, or I'm really near the top, I'm gonna, like, you suddenly put the outcome in there. That's generally when there would be clutch.
You start fighting for it a little bit more. Yeah, I wonder if the things wind up kind of being on a spectrum or being like two sides of the same coin. I'm not sure how that'll play out. I guess we didn't say this earlier, but it's worth mentioning that, like, one, especially with sport routes, this is definitely true for boulders with me too, but like when it comes to the whole challenge level versus skill level thing, which is, I think, really, really important for getting into flow. With routes, I feel like a lot of what I'm doing is I'm building like a specific set of skills for the route and like building confidence for the route so that my challenge level and my skill level like can meet a little more appropriately. Otherwise, it would be like the first time I'd get on the route. If I was already there, I would be able to get into flow much more quickly. And maybe that's also just because I have anxiety about like not knowing the moves and not knowing how they're going to feel and stuff. And you need to sort of dispel some of that before you can get closer to that flow state. So is that process of, could we think about the process of working a route sort of as being removing barriers to an eventual flow and like giving ourselves more of an advantage to get to that flow state that's going to help us send the route?
I guess I would think that you also have the capacity to be in flow while working the route. I kind of, I'm not sure. I kind of know what you're saying in that, like, you're creating the right challenge level by the time that you get to the route. But I would argue that, say, when it might be, on that first go up, might be a lot harder because you don't know what's coming. Are you going to have enough energy to get it all? How is it going to get scary? Like loads of different thoughts. But then I would say you can still control the environment to help you get there. So it's like, okay, well, this might be a bit scary. Do I have the clipstick handy? How can I really make this playful? How can I be creative with it? How can I focus on mastery of the moves in that moment? Which would help, again, cultivate more flow experiences.
Give yourself something like more productive to focus on during that working process.
Feedback, again, is an important part of it. So getting immediate feedback. So if kind of setting like mini goals when you're working it, again, could help you get there. So, okay, I'm just going to get really focused. I'm going to get really present to just do this one clip. And again, like, so then you know if you're going to achieve that, you know where you are, you know what you need to change as you're climbing through. To bring that focus and engagement.
Yeah. I mean, the feedback thing makes me think of like, and this ties back to what I was saying earlier, and then what you sort of bounced back about, like the process of working a route being about like getting to that eventual flow state where you send. Like I'm always trying to get into flow in my red point attempts. Like as soon as I'm trying to red point the route, or even if I'm doing links, I think I'm getting into some sort of like mini flow. And I don't know if this is what other people feel, but when I'm trying to red point a route, I think often what's happening is like I have a red point try from the ground. I'm usually in a really good flow. I'm a boulderer, I'm largely a boulderer, so I tend to leave the ground with quite a bit of, vigor. And then I stay in pretty good flow. And then, my high point is usually whatever, 2 to 4 moves after something has built up inside of me that's like preventing me from, it's either like I'm getting really pumped, or I get to a rest and I feel awful, or I do a move badly because I haven't rehearsed it as well as I thought I had or something. And then sort of that flow state like gets yoinked away. And then it's like just much harder to sort of continue on unencumbered. And then I know like that's the part of the route that I need to focus on or something, right? That's kind of how the process feels for me.
And I guess at those points, it'd be interesting to think about if you know that's when flow, you might get pulled out of flow. You think, okay, well, what do I know that can help me get back into it? Can I practice mindfulness and just noticing those feelings? And can I then refocus on what needs to be done and what I can control? So I think, there's always ways to think, well, how can we improve it?
Yeah, I'm like a big fan of commitment cues, and there's something that I use with clients all the time. And this is sort of a classic like skinny chef probably thing, but like this was my first season of like really trying to sport climb in a few years. And I mean, I did a little bit last year, but I didn't really try that hard. And it was just surprising to me that I needed to actually do all of the things that I coach other people to do, like to red point the hardest route that I did this summer, like pulling out commitment cues at the rest and like keeping myself in flow by like telling myself that I really wanted to do the route and that I was going to proceed upwards, and all those sort of things was like very, very helpful for me. But it took me quite a few sessions of like failing to do that before I was like, oh yeah, like if I was coaching myself, I would, use these tools to like help myself stay in flow.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. One other question I have about flow for you is, maybe this ties back to the self-regulating challenges thing, but I kind of feel sometimes like when I'm working a boulder, especially if I'm working it with a close friend who's like at a similar like skill level, or if I'm working a first ascent, so I really have no idea how hard it's going to be, I feel like I can get into a pretty good flow state just practicing the moves. And I think you sort of said that's like that you think that's a thing too, because it applies to all skills. But I'm just curious your thoughts on chasing flow state for like even working moves or like during sessions.
Yeah, I think that's definitely what we want to be doing. It like flow is about optimal experience. So why not try and make that happen for training just when you're out and about. One, it's really enjoyable and really rewarding, but yeah, you can access your best when you're in flow. So if we can train at our best, we're just going to get more effective training out of it.
Yeah, makes sense. And like with athletes who compete, do you think the 5 minutes during like a semis round where they're sitting there waiting for their next turn on a boulder or their next boulder, is it possible for people to, remain in flow or at least like remain undistracted during those experiences? Or is that more about just, the mindfulness and focusing on the sort of values and stuff and then like trying to snap back into flow once the next round starts?
Yeah, I wonder, I've not really thought about kind of that, whether you'd be achieving or being in flow during those moments.
Because you are challenged. For sure.
Yeah. You're like mentally challenged, and I guess it'd be interesting to see what that would look like for people. And that might mean like what you just said about focusing on your values and why you want to be there and what's important to you in those moments. I'm just wondering, can you be in flow while sitting?
I wonder if like a monk or someone who has like tremendous experience with mindfulness practice like would be in flow just sitting there meditating. I sort of assume so. I'm not sure if like a physical activity is like a requirement.
The physicalness, like you could have it in a conversation, which is obviously isn't physical. I guess mindfulness it's very important for flow, and being present is again a big aspect of flow, but mindfulness is not being in a flow state, like the specific you're being aware, you're noticing, you're being present, but it hasn't got that skill element. Whereas, yeah, maybe focusing, like being intentionally thinking about values and the mental challenge in such a high pressure situation might mean that you do end up in flow in those situations.
Yeah, it's easy for me to imagine a really skilled competitor coming out for, a semis round is the one that sticks out in my mind because it's just so fast and intense. It's like, what is it, 40 or 50 minutes, depending on how many boulders. And like, it's easy for me to imagine like an elite competitor just remaining in a state for that entire thing, especially because they're probably going to be focused on getting the right things out of the experience. We keep coming back to the term values, so I think maybe it's time for us to just talk about values. It's something that you've brought up a few times as being like something that we can think about or focus on in order to improve the quality of the experience that we're having at that time, or it can be something that we draw on to reduce barriers, or something that we use as a gateway to flow. What would those be, and how do we figure out what they are? That's an extremely broad question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so when we're talking about values, a value is it's not something that we can ever achieve. It's like, it's a way that we want to approach life, the way we want to behave. So it kind of knowing what our values are offers us like a compass of like our North Star of, well, what direction do I want to always be in? I'm never actually going to achieve that, but how can I always move towards that direction? So I guess what could a value be? It's like something like kindness, authenticity, mastery, commitment. So you can never like have them, but you can be them. You can act authentically. You are authentic. So in terms of how do you find your own? I think a nice way of doing it is just getting up a big, like, type in values into the internet, get up a big table of loads of different values, and just look at it and think, okay, well, what jumps out to me? And just over 5 minutes, just kind of highlight a load of values that stick out and like, oh yeah, that's me, that's how I want to act. And then just slowly, like, aim to reduce them down to like 6 values, and then drop them down again to 3. Always kind of thinking, okay, well, how do these fewer values encompass, how do they umbrella some of these other values that are really important to me? So you end up with 3 values that actually might mean like quite a few different values, but like it's chunked down to 3, and you know that they're really important to you. So I guess for me, my 3 values are compassion, mastery, and self-expression. And kind of mastery to me is like that commitment, that creativity, problem solving, having a growth mindset. Self-expression like is part of like authenticity for me. It relates to like the movement on the rock. It relates to like, I'm really into DJing and music, so like that dancing element, and like sharing music. And then compassion, both to myself but kindness to others. So it's like, while you're only getting 3, to you they'll mean a lot more than just those 3 words. And you can really always then think, okay, well, am I acting in line with what is important to me? And if I'm not, what can I change?
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I love the idea of like identifying a lot of them, sort of scattershot, because I think if people look at a big list of values, like it, I'm sure you're going to highlight a lot of things, because very few people are going to be like, no, like kindness, that doesn't, like, I'm not interested in, you know what I mean? Like most people probably relate to the value of kindness, but it might not be like one of their top values. But if they're also interested in some of these other things like compassion, it's easy to see how that could drive you to be more kind, because it's just kind of like related, but it might not still be your peak value. So I like that way of thinking about it. And I think a lot about my values, but I've never actually gone and looked at a big list and highlighted a bunch. So that actually sounds like a interesting activity to do.
Yeah.
I think you also mentioned the value of health when we did our pre-interview.
Yeah.
As an example. And I found that one really, I guess this is just I'm like performance, like driven in a very almost negative way, but it never occurred to me that my health would be like a value that I would prize very highly as a climber. It's just something I always like discard. Yeah. I'll give that a little bit more thought maybe in the future. Can you help us tie this activity of thinking through our values to like our actual day-to-day climbing? Like how does this help us be better climbers?
Yeah, so if we really are authentic to our values and actually we know that they mean something to us and we want to live by them because that's what's important to you, it means that we can always reorientate to like climbing in a way that is important to us. So yeah, you might have a goal to do a certain grade, a certain climb, and that's like a specific outcome. But if we have that and also be doing it because it's meaningful to you, because it means that you can have like really focus on the mastery of it, or do it in a way that is kind of prioritizing your health, it means that even if we don't ever achieve that goal, we're still doing something that's meaningful to us, that has purpose, that is important. So it kind of takes that pressure away from that outcome. And if we can take that pressure, it makes it a lot easier to be playful, to be creative, to trust ourselves to do what's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost like a tool to remain process-driven a little bit more.
Exactly. Yeah.
So a dot that this is really connecting for me is I really like to do first ascents. It's just always like been part of my climbing to like go out and find things that haven't been climbed. And the first, 80% or something of the experience is just always positive and fun, of just like uncovering things and being really creative and like trying to understand what it is that I'm sort of trying to do. And then that like actual red pointing part of the process, over the years I've gotten much better at it, but I think maybe it's just like maybe one of my higher values is something like creativity or like self-expression, like you said. And it's just once I get like deeper and deeper into the red point process, I'm like a little bit less connected to that sort of creativity value, because it's, at that point in the process, it's you want to do it. and being creative doesn't get you there quite as well at that point in the process. Yeah. Yeah,
and I guess it's like, it's why we don't just have one value. It might be different values are prioritized at different points as well. But I think, there's always opportunity to think, okay, well, am I acting in a way that is in line with what I value? And if you're feeling like a lot of pressure for something, okay, I think, okay, well, what value is not being met, or maybe what value is so I guess what I'm trying to say here, when we really feel something towards something and we feel a lot of pressure, it's actually like a sign that it's telling you something's important. So it's kind of saying, okay, well, what is this telling me about my values right now? And do I need to kind of shift things around a bit to kind of know that it's still important, but take away that kind of negative pressure?
Yeah. This makes me think of, I think it's Jerry Moffat. There's like an old pro tips video it's like from early days of YouTube. I'm sure it was a VHS tape or something like that, but it's Jerry talking about mindset and saying that like when you're getting ready to go for a red point, like of course you're going to be nervous and like your heart's going to be pumping really fast. And if it wasn't doing that, then you probably like don't give a shit about the thing that you're trying to climb. It's like not important to you. And that really stuck with me when I saw it 15 years ago or whatever. I was just like, oh yeah, like it's okay to be like nervous going for a red point, because it's just like I've always taken it now as a sign that I I want to do it. So of course I'm nervous.
Yeah. And I think the cool thing with flow is that, yeah, the nerves are there and it means something's meaningful. And actually, having those nerves gives you that adrenaline, which then gives you that extra focus. It gives you extra energy. So actually, I think I've said it before, like using the pressure as a privilege, like it's there to help you, rather than it's there to kind of sabotage you.
Yeah, pressure is it's like a force multiplier. Like if you can turn it to your advantage, it's like incredibly powerful. But if you let it take control of the situation, then it will make you have an even less fun time.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I really enjoy trying to flash hard boulders. Like I've probably come closer to my genetic potential with flashing than I have with red pointing. And I think a lot of the reason that I've been able to do that is because I can thrive on that sensation of pressure and like you said, I feel the adrenaline when I'm getting ready to try to flash something really hard. Like it's just an ability to like control through that, and not get like shaky or like lose your focus, but to just be able to harness that energy, I think is a really, really potent thing. And I don't have the highest work capacity, so with a flash try, It's just you only need to give it one good try. So
going back to values, that's why they can be so helpful, because we're noticing, I'm getting quite nervous now, oh God. And when you're actually, I'm doing this because it's meaningful, because it means that I can challenge myself. It means that I'm following my value of like committing to something, say, then that's exciting. I can use this to my advantage rather than the downward spiral of, oh God, what if I don't do it? What are people going to say? This is stressful. I hate this. I don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah. I think, well, to use the flashing example, I think something that I find really helpful, not in like dispelling the pressure necessarily, but at least in like understanding it for myself. Like, even though I think I've had some really good flashes, like, the vast majority of the hard boulders that I do, I don't flash. And actually probably maybe not the vast majority, but a good chunk of the hard boulders that I try, I don't even do. So I think there's just sort of like this, why would I even expect myself to succeed? Like I'm going to try really hard to do it, but it's sort of like, of course I'm not going to do it. So like, what's the big deal? Like I'll just like try really, really hard and sort of find out what happens. It's almost like, yeah, is there some sort of like, this is related to a question that my friend, I just asked on my like Slack that I have with all my clients. He didn't really frame the question super well, but he and I have climbed together a lot, and he seems to do quite well when he takes the pressure off of himself, almost by saying like, I'll never do it, or like, this is way too hard for me, or like, I've never flashed V8, or like whatever the thing is. He'll like take the pressure off of himself by really trying to almost like negative self-talk. Like, I'm just curious to get your take on that. What do you think is happening there?
Yeah, so he's kind of downplaying himself, or like to take the pressure off doing it. Is that so? I guess for him, it's working, it's helpful. If he knows that works, then great.
Is his value like humility or something?
I guess it's like, do you want to use that technique? Is that actually is that a satisfying way of doing it? Do you want to do that? Because maybe if it worked, like, if it works, it works, but there could be a better way. So, yeah, I don't want to tell someone that if they're doing something that I might not be quite right, might quite be in the flow framework. If it's helping them, crack on, but ask yourself, is that actually the way you want to approach your climbing? And could there be a better way?
Yeah, I think that seems apt to me, because I've climbed with this group of people, and I just find myself sometimes, they're all really cool people, by the way. Shout out to that whole crew. I don't know if they listen to my podcast, but They're sometimes really brutal with each other, with like the shit talking and the negative self talk. And I'm almost like, when I'm in the middle of it, I'm almost like, God, you guys are like so hard on yourselves. But yeah, they're all climbing the boulders and stuff. So
Yeah.
it seems to work
And if
okay for
they're
them.
yeah, and if they're happy doing that and that's the approach they want to take, then yeah, why
Yeah,
not?
that's funny. Do you do you think that positive self talk ties into the values thing in like a sort of direct way? Because I really like positive self talk, and I'm really careful when I'm projecting not to like do too much of like, oh, this hold is, so bad, or like I'm not good at crimping and that kind. I try to be really careful about that kind of stuff, but I have noticed that it seems inconsistent with high achievers that I climb with and talk to, and some of them are pretty overtly negative, and I wonder if that is like a values thing, or they just are able to to climb really well despite being negative. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think even the highest performers will be doing stuff that works for them, but is not necessarily optimal. There's like people can do very well being very extrinsically motivated.
Hmm.
It does work, but I guess we can think, well, does it consistently work? Is there a
Hmm.
way that is more consistent? And I guess the flow framework provides that. It gives much more. We know that if we achieve flow, we can be optimally our best. So then we can be consistently better. Whereas, um, yeah, being negative or being very extrinsically motivated, yeah, it will work sometimes, but other times you might just have a really rubbish time and it doesn't work so well.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if like your values kind of drive your social group, and you're gonna like naturally find people where you have like overlapping values with them, and then presumably people who are more extrinsically motivated are gonna thrive more off of like either social group that has maybe not the same values, but values that kind of interlock with them, or maybe they're gonna like get a lot of their drive from social media and stuff, which I guess probably has its own, that's a whole can of worms. But yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to think about, and I sort of briefly touched on value capture when we did our like pre-interview, and just that idea that like we can sort of accidentally wind up doing things for the wrong reasons without trying very hard. And I think it's really interesting to think about that for me from the lens of doing the homework to figure out what your values are, because that probably makes it a lot easier to not have your values get captured when you go climb with other people, or when you like spend a lot of time on social media. I know I'm not asking questions here, but I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, so values capture, am I right in saying it's like you originally do something because you value the activity, and then you put an external, like you make it something that you can achieve. So and then you stop doing it for the original reason and do it to achieve what the value achieves.
Yeah, I mean, I think the like easiest climbing example is just when you start climbing, it's just a fun thing that you can do with your body. You don't even really know what the grade scale is, other than it's just a way for you to not get in over your head. And then as you climb longer and longer, the grade scale starts to become like a way to calibrate the challenge. And then for a lot of people, they just take it to the next level, where it's like actually the reason they're climbing is to try to climb a harder grade.
Yeah.
So the value of like whatever it is they enjoy about climbing has been captured by the value of the number go up, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you're right with if we're able to reflect on why we're doing something, is it for that value, for what's important to us, or for the like that number? That's and like noticing the internal dialogue and like the kind of the story you're telling yourself, like does it turn into, oh, I need to do this grade because it will show that I'm a better climber, it will show that I've progressed since I started? Are those stories helpful? And then it's thinking, okay, well, yeah, going back to those values, well, what is helpful? it's focusing on that creativity, that play. That's why I really enjoyed it. And yeah, coming back to those original reasons.
Mm-hmm. Something I appreciate about this framing is that it explains something that I've had a bunch of times where, I put out a lot of content on the internet about like, trying to have a positive relationship with climbing. And, I wouldn't say I haven't made any content that's explicitly about values. Maybe I will now, but I definitely have danced around a lot of these same ideas in terms of like, it's just easier to remain process driven when you are doing it for the right reasons. And I've just a few times had conversations with people who are like, well, I like chasing grades. Like I just want to climb the hardest thing that I can. And that's like why I climb. And I think I've always sort of just been like, well, yeah, that's cool. Like, good for you. That's great. And in this conversation makes it make a lot more sense. Like those people may just be in genuine harmony, and like what they actually want is, maybe performance would be the value or something like that. I'm not sure how you would put it into a single word, but yeah, maybe they actually are, or maybe it's extrinsic. Maybe they really are just trying to prove something to other people, and they are in like harmony with their values in that sense.
And I guess with them, there will be, it's kind of like, okay, what is it about chasing the grades do you actually enjoy? What is it about that? Like, there will be, if they are genuinely enjoying it, there will be some kind of internal values there, which they are putting as the, like, I guess chasing that grade allows them to achieve those, like, allows them to be in line with those values. But I think if you really stripped it back, it wouldn't actually be the grade, it would be the process to get there.
Mm-hmm. I think that probably makes sense. Like, I've asked this question of people a few times. I think at this point my coaching clientele is like pretty self-selected for people who know what kind of thing they're going to get from me. But definitely earlier in my coaching, I would get more people who are a little grade chasey. Maybe people just don't tell me they're grade chasey because they know I'm going to lecture them now. I'm not sure. But I would have this conversation with people. It's like, if all you really want to do is climb V10, if that's like the only thing that matters to you in your climbing, and you're a 6 foot tall man and like you have, a few weeks off a year, like why not just find the most morpho soft V10 that you can and like take your vacation and go there on a trip, and like that you'll be able to climb that grade there more easily. Like, would that still satisfy you? And I think it's like, it's a little bit, it twists my brain a little bit to think that there could actually be the type of person where like that is in line with their values. But I think based on this conversation, it actually totally makes sense that it could be in line with their values, just depending on what they are.
Yeah, and I'm still questioning it a bit, because a value is something you can never achieve. So
right, yeah, V10 can't be the value.
You can't. Yeah, V10 can't be the value. Yeah. So I guess like V10 could provide the focus and the kind of the drive, but the value would be how you got there and how they decided to get there.
Do you think we have like a lot of, I guess agency would be the word in terms of our values? Like, do you think we can change them over time, or is it more about figuring out, like learning what we're like figuring out who we are as climbers? Or is it something where we can like kind of set a value and like try to move ourselves more towards that value?
I think the research shows that values are very stable across time. Like, you could have values, like if you thought about it as a kid, they are probably quite similar to what they are now. And they kind of, it's not just saying climbing, it's across life in general. I think there might be some adaptation, and kind of how you prioritize them can change. But like you said, I think it's a lot about actually just figuring out what they are.
What are like some of the most common, when you work with people, because you obviously are a mindset coach, I'm not sure how explicitly we've talked about that, but we'll make sure to cover it. When you work with people, like what are the most common values that you end up hearing people have?
They're always different. Yeah, always quite different. Yeah, I'm always like, surely everybody's got my values. And then you're like, oh, wow, they're totally not my values.
Yeah, that's fun. That's funny. That rings true. Again, this is just giving me more explicit language to understand things that I already kind of intuitively know. But yeah, I've, had lots of coaching experiences where I'm like, well, this is like what you want out of your climbing. That's like cool. Good for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't relate,
like,
but
rolling with that. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's always a little bit of like a push and pull as a coach. And again, like I think flashing is a really good example. Like some people just really don't like flashing or on-sighting, because it's such a high anxiety experience, and like it's often very physically difficult because you're grabbing the holds weird and trying really hard and stuff like that. And a lot of people just don't like it. And I think it still has a lot of value for becoming a better climber. Like it's just an important practice for becoming a better climber. But yeah, I've had enough coaching experiences now where I'm just like, it's not for everyone. I can't like make people love it.
No. And I think like as a coach, especially with my mindset coaching, my aim to kind of offer new perspectives and like show, like bring up blind spots that you might have, which then might lead to like a realization that it's not that I don't like it, it's that I put a lot of pressure on it, and that's because I'm putting too much emphasis on the outcome of what that means. Yeah, I think there's always things that we don't realize ourselves, and yeah, getting more perspective on something often shows us that actually the value's there, and actually I can learn to maybe not love it, but appreciate, like really understand it and appreciate it for what it is, rather than adding an extra layer of dislike, frustration, anger, all those kind of emotions.
Yeah, you're just kind of engaging with your climbing like through a shield or something that you have to like reach through or go around every time you're trying to actually like have a genuine climbing experience, I guess. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Is that a lot of what your coaching is focused on? Like, is it I assume it's a mix, but yeah, how much do you like help people perform better versus like deal with some specific problem that they have in their climbing, which I know are two sides of the same coin, but yeah, what's it look like?
I'd say it always starts it ends up being quite broad in that, I think like what you said there about like climbing through a screen to actually get the experience. I don't actually know what words I think that described it really well, whatever words you just said. And it's helping people see that screen. Like I feel like a lot of what I do is giving them perspective so that they can see that screen, see what needs to happen to help move it away, and then practicing that to help keep that clear for them. If that makes sense.
It does, yeah. Yeah, I had it in mind that we would talk a little bit about like stress and allostatic load during the flow conversation, but I actually didn't bring it up. But the whole climbing through a screen thing, I think allostatic load is a really good example of that. Like, probably a lot of climbers can relate to like their climbing feels really clunky and their training's not going as well as they'd like, and everything's really, and then they have a week off and they go to Bishop or something for a week, and they just have like a killer time and they feel really connected to their climbing and everything's going super well. And it's like, oh, imagine that when you're not like super stressed at work all day and then going to the gym at 5 p.m. when it's really crowded, and instead you're like outside in the sunshine, like, oh, climbing is suddenly like much less stressful and you like have a lot more flow experiences than you were having before. So it's kind of really about like, it's kind of about like getting to that a little bit more easily, even in your like day-to-day life kind of. Yeah,
exactly. That was a really nice example. Yeah
I mean, I just run into that a lot working with, I think I work with a lot of like professionals who have busy lives and stuff like that. So let me think about what we haven't covered. Is there any topics that we haven't gotten into that you want to talk about? We hit the major areas in the outline, but I'm just curious if you have any like general things we haven't talked about.
I do feel like we talked about a lot. Is there anything?
It was action packed so far.
Maybe something what you were saying with kind of self-talk has reminded me about visualization and like how we're setting the scene. Like, how are we, when you're like route reading and visualizing yourself doing a climb, are you visualizing yourself in flow? Are you kind of creating that feeling you want to be feeling? Like, our brain is very good at kind of predicting what it wants to happen and then doing that, what's predicted. So kind of what you were saying with the negative self-talk, I think it can be quite a self-fulfilling prophecy if we're kind of always telling ourselves like, oh, just fingers aren't strong enough for that move. I just can't do it. I think it tells your body you can't do it. Whereas on the other side, if we can train and practice visualizing being in flow, so what do we want the experience to be like? How do we want to feel that effortlessness? How do we want to like move fluidly through it? And bringing that into the visualization, as well as kind of knowing what hold and what position you need to be in, I think can be important aspect and helpful aspect for flow.
Yeah, having like not just a physical quality to your visualization, but also having like an emotional quality to it, or like not spiritual, I'm not sure what like a meta quality to your visualization that's like higher than just the physicality of it. I think that makes sense. Yeah,
like really embodying what that feels like.
Yeah, and I would say like I regularly get into flow states while I'm visualizing too. Like, not while I'm climbing necessarily, but when I'm rehearsing away from climbing. And I think that's like a lot of the power of visualization, is just getting more reps on your project. Again, it goes back to that idea that like I'm sort of increasing my skill level or bringing down the challenge level of the route to try to like get them a little more evened out so that I can access more flow on the route. And I think visualization, that probably is one of the key powers of visualization, which I'm huge fan of in general.
Yeah.
Is that a big part of your practice as well?
Visualization, is a big thing. So I'll always do it before like a red point, and then I find it easier to do it bouldering, obviously, because you've got so many less moves. And because I get coached on my mindset from another flow coach, Adina, each week, and I remember quite clearly last year we did there was a boulder which had a really tricky foot, and you had to really put pressure on it in a certain way. And in our coaching session, she ran through a flow visualization. So she guided me so that I got into flow and really felt like I was climbing it while sat in my seat. And she brought in an anchor, so I can't remember what I did, but something to remind myself of that state. And I used it then when I went back to the climb, and it was just really, really cool how I was then able to use that foot and trust the foot. So I don't always go into that much depth with my visualization. I think I would be a better climber probably if I did it more often, but I like to close my eyes, really feel how that would feel as if I was in flow.
Yeah, I think that I totally relate to that, especially with like a specific detail, something that you've noticed you need to do. I think that's like really powerful. I've never had anybody guide me through it, and I've never guided anybody through it, but I think that's a really interesting, it's almost like hypnotherapy or something.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, kind of off NLP.
Yeah. You mentioned like it being easier with bouldering, and I've done things like, I'll have people practice visualizing just a couple moves at a time to start, because I feel like it's almost a muscle that you need to, work out in order to make it stronger. But even with sport routes, 60 move sport routes or something, maybe if it's the hardest thing I've ever done, I'm going to visualize all the moves, but probably not every time I visualize it, because I just actually don't have that much time in the day, And so like it becomes, I think, more important to focus on that that meta quality of like what you want your climbing to be like, and sort of keeping the details, the physical details can be kept quite sparse, I think, and you can still have a really effective visualization. And to go back to the flashing and on-sighting conversation, like I definitely not in my best sport on-sighting shape right now, but when I've been in really good sport on-sighting shape, I've done lots of visualization, even when I don't know like what routes I'm going to try, that day or whatever. I just know I'm somewhere where I'm going to do a lot of on-sighting, and I'll do some like visualizing of just feeling
nice,
flowy and like free and loose and like relaxed and all that kind of stuff. And I've had really good success with that.
Nice, that's cool. Yeah, I find for me it really helps that trust and just letting yourself climb when you pull on. Kind of your body knows what to do, and you just, let yourself go.
Yeah. Do you do first person or third person visualization mostly?
I do a mixture. I actually try and do, if I've got the time, I watch myself climb it in the third person, and then I feel like that to get that really embodiment of what it feels like, that is for me in that first person. I feel like I imagine myself doing it as a person.
More connected to it.
Yeah.
I've always found the third person like really hard to do a good job of connecting with.
Yeah, and it's definitely very individual. Like some people, some people do just find it more difficult, and it's finding the one that works best for you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any other thoughts on visualization?
Nothing that's coming to mind.
Okay. Flo, how do you, just tell us how you work with people, or, if they found this conversation interesting, like how do they find you and work with you?
So you can find me through the Lattice website if you type in Lattice Mindset Coaching. And I work with just online, unless you're in Sheffield and I can meet up. And kind of 1 hour long conversations. It works best if there are like you can book one or like multiple sessions. If we do have the block, it means that you can really explore where you're at in that first session to then get more like focused practice in the next sessions. It definitely helps with that longer term. I find when in that first conversation, it is very much really understanding your experience and what you want to become and what you want experience to be like from where it is now. So I'm always, I guess how it works, I'm not here to offer advice. I'm here to work like what works for you, using kind of like I talked about, helping to give more perspective, kind of highlight blind spots, and moving forwards from there.
Cool. It's a smart way to think about it. All right. Any other final thoughts you want to leave people with, or places they can find you on the internet? Anything interesting coming up you want to tell people about?
You can, on Instagram, I'm not a super don't post regularly.
Good for you, dude.
I try to and fail. But I guess my final top tips is for Flo anyway would be playfulness, finding that creativity through play, and allowing yourself to trust through play as well. I think that would be my top tip. And think about your values. That will help with that.
Do you have any resources for the values thing, or do you think you just literally Google values?
Yeah, literally Google values. Hundreds come up.
Awesome.
Good old Google.
Cool. Well, I really appreciate this. I think we covered a lot of interesting stuff in there. So it was nice to meet you. I'm glad Ollie connected us, and thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, it's been great chatting to you. Thank you, Jesse.
Cool. Cheers.